70 years ago, more than 500 young Scots radicals volunteered to serve in the Spanish Civil War.
In many ways, the Spanish Civil War was the climax of a whole series of issues in Scotland from the late 1920s onwards. So, for example, we could start with the general strike of 1926, to mass unemployment, to the hunger marches, to the means test, and to the activity of the British Union fascist Oswald Mosley in Scotland and the public meetings that he held north of the border.
Resistance to domestic fascism in the form of the British Union of Fascists was widespread in Scotland and formed a vital part of the political landscape that led to involvement in Spain.
They had a very proud record, the unemployed workers movement and activists then, of making sure that a fascist meeting had never actually lasted more than a few minutes. They had a very good intelligence network. They in fact had recruited and talked with the tram workers. So they were able to find information very short notice if a fascist meeting was taking place. And they used to just ride on the trams for free and get up there and simply go in and put the boot in. They also, of course, had the proud record that the National Policy Director of the British Union of Fascists, when they were on their UK tour, admitted in a report that the toughest town that they were ever in was actually Aberdeen.
Wherever the British fascists rallied or marched, a mass Scottish anti-fascist resistance mobilised. That same resistance would not let mere national borders obstruct it from its work. Aberdonian railway worker John Longdragon was one of those who exported the fight from Scotland to Spain.
For myself, I went for political reasons. I had fought fascism in the street here in Aberdeen, and Glasgow for that matter at that particular time, and I was conscious of the fact of what fascism would do if they ever came to power. Now, it's one thing to fight them in the streets here, but to be really true to yourself, to believe in what you actually believe in as an anti-fascist, you had to follow it up. You couldn't say, well, I'll fight fascism here in Aberdeen, but I won't fight it anywhere else. I'd given up the ghost. That's ridiculous. You can't have that argument. You must follow up if you actually believe in it. And this is what I believed in.
To those that volunteered to go to Spain, it didn't matter whether fascism cropped up in Buckhaven or Barcelona. The point was to oppose it. They were motivated too by the idea that were fascism not nipped in the bud in Spain, the inevitable result would be a wider European war. As the popular slogan went, bombs on Madrid today means bombs on Glasgow tomorrow. They believed only by stopping Franco, Hitler and Mussolini in Spain could a world war be prevented. Many of those who would go on to fight there were members of the National Unemployed Workers Movement and took part in its hunger marches to London. Jenny Renton runs a bookshop in Edinburgh. Her father Donald was a key figure in the Spanish Civil War. She remembers politics as being the central motivation in his life.
Princess Diana once said that there were 3 people in her marriage, and that was absolutely the same for my mother. There was her, and there was him, and then there were politics. The politics meant that the politics was really the first lady of my father's life. Politics was why my father wasn't around much when I was a child. Politics was why he went to Spain and she was left here, not knowing when he was in prison whether he was alive or dead. And politics was the reason why, in his absence, I was given the myth was constantly being reinforced of how great a man he was, which in fact, you know, I know he did have some greatness in him, and I still somehow really subscribe to that myth.
For trainee accountant John Dunlop, political motivations for volunteering were accompanied by ethical ones.
I was excited naturally by the stories reading about the International Brigade in Spain, and I decided that it really was my duty to go. And so I was brought up with a strong Presbyterian conscience, and I had, you know, these ideas of duty and responsibility sort of inbred in me. So I decided to join, and I was accepted, and to me it was the most wonderful experience of my life.
George Gowans of Cumnock was stirred to act by his sense of injustice.
My first introduction to Spain was In the mess room, I was in the post office, and in the mess room there's always plenty of papers lying around, and I picked up this Daily Worker. Believe it or not, I'd never heard of it before. And I read of how non-intervention was going to take place between Britain and France. And to me, it seemed against all international law that Spain should be deprived of food, clothing, or whatever necessary by two major powers. And I thought to myself, well, I can speak a bit of Esperanto. I could probably be of some assistance, supposing it was even as an interpreter. So I thought I would take myself off to Spain.
These motivations were often accompanied by an understandable sense of adventure, as writer Chris Dolan explains.
Because as well as all the politics, as well as and the influence of the Communist Party in particular in Scotland in the 1930s, what an adventure. You know, if I were an unemployed young working man in Scotland in 1936, what an opportunity to go to Spain and to fight against the greatest evil of all, but to have this camaraderie of going on a bus, going to London, seeing Paris, travelling with your mates to Spain, drinking Spanish wine, meeting Spanish senoritas. I mean, there must have been all of that, and good on them. Why shouldn't there be? Why shouldn't there be that sense of adventure? But it was undoubtedly coupled entirely with a real sense of political purpose.
Whatever their motivations for taking the radical step of going to Spain, Scottish volunteers faced a perilous journey to get there. John Dunlop ran into obstacles from the outset.
We decided we were going to go off on the 30th of May on get the 5 o'clock train from Glasgow to London. And so I told this old chap, I've been friendly with in the office, I said, I told him actually on the afternoon, I said, well, cheerio WB, he said, you might not be seeing me again. I said, because I'm going off to Spain to join the International Brigade. And he said, are you sure? And he was a bit worried, very worried about it. So, and I pushed off early from the office, you see, and to get ready to go. And he was so worried, and he phoned up my Uncle Norman, and Norman phoned up my father in Edinburgh, and the deputation went to try and head me off at the station, but unfortunately they went an hour too late. They went to the train after I'd gone, so I never saw the deputation. Didn't know there was the reaction till after I got to Spain.
Early on in the conflict, Scots travelled to Spain as individuals or in small groups, an act of daring heightened by the fact that so few of them had left Scotland before.
The working class people didn't go abroad in these particular times. We couldn't afford these sort of things at all. It was only the students and people like that. So a number of these students who were in France when the war broke out in Spain, they crossed the border and went into Spain and joined little militia bands at that particular time. They weren't formed as a NID group, as an international brigade or anything like that. That came, as I say, in about January 1937.
From the winter of 1936, volunteers were channelled through the Communist Party's Glasgow office and dispatched to London by train or bus.
First we left Glasgow on Thursday night, arrived in London on Friday morning. Friday night we left on a weekend ticket to Paris at 28 and sixpence, return Friday night to Tuesday morning. But of course naturally we never used the return.
Well, as I say, we went, the three of us from Dundee went to Glasgow, and there was a group there, and we went out to London. I don't remember who we met, but they asked, does anybody here speak French? Nobody. I said, well, I had it at school. I said, you'll do. And I was handed a packet of 10 cigarettes. Now give this to somebody over when you go to Paris. So we got a weekend ticket. It was the longest weekend of my life. But we got this weekend ticket to go to Paris, and when we were aboard the ship, it was a French ship, it came over the Tannoy that all those without passports report to the purser's office. So I got these two Dundee lads, and I says, come on, we'll go up right away. So went in, and this lad, he says, you going to Paris? I said, yes. He says, why? I said, well, we just finished our exams. I was carrying on as a student and such like. I could have passed for one at that time.